Welcome to InFocus. I'm Rosslind Rice. Less than a week before Election Day 2020, the nation is well aware of the gravity of this year's choices. In this episode, we're in focus on the impact of elections, as well as what can and has impacted them. We start with a look at a decision Illinois voters are making this November. State lawmakers approved a proposed constitutional amendment, but the question must win approval from voters before it becomes a part of Illinois' governing document. Mark McDonald takes a look at what led to this proposal and how other decisions have impacted the way Illinois does business.
Every voter in Illinois, if they've already voted, they've already noticed this, or those that will go in on November 3rd, will see that the very first thing on their ballot, top left, is an amendment to the Constitution. My guest is Dr. Kent Redfield, Professor Emeritus at University of Illinois Springfield. Kent, what is this constitutional amendment? What does it, boil it down for us? What does it say?
Okay, it removes language in the state constitution that says if you levy an income tax, it has to be at a flat rate. It can't be at a graduated rate. And this amendment takes out the language involving the prohibition on graduated income taxes. So it doesn't require the state to have an income tax. That's up to the legislature. It doesn't require the state to have a graduated or a flat rate tax income tax if they choose to levy one. You know, it is permissive in terms of taking out a restriction and giving the legislature the option to either levy an income tax at a graduated rate, a flat rate, or not have an income tax at all.
We've been living in Illinois with the same flat rate tax since the last time the Constitution was ratified in 1970, I guess. So this is a big change.
Yeah, it's a major change. I mean, we actually had a income tax in 1969 that was a flat rate that the Supreme Court approved under the old Constitution, but then when we had the Constitutional Convention, they put that, they allowed for an income tax, but they put in the language that said it has to be a flat rate.
Yeah, and it's not easy to get to this point, is it? That the process of getting something on a ballot can be a rocky road, and through the ballot, it's going to take what 60% of the vote to get it approved. So it's a kind of a hard haul, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to have 3/5, 60% of the House, 60% of the Senate, the members that are elected. So it has to be, it has to be a 3/5 vote of everyone to put something on the ballot. And once it gets on the ballot, then there are really two triggers. It has to be a majority of everyone voting in the election. And if you choose to not vote on it, it essentially counts as a no vote. Or you have to get a 60% of those voting specifically on the question. And that's turned out to be a very difficult standard to meet. We have approved constitutional amendments recently. One involving victims' rights, another amendment that essentially said you can't divert money from the Illinois Road Fund, which is gas taxes and other things. You can't divert that to essentially non-transportation purposes. But when you get something controversial, like there was an amendment in 2012 to say that you needed a 3/5 vote to increase the pension benefits in Illinois public pension fund systems, that failed. So it's a very difficult hurdle to get 3/5 of the legislature agreeing on something, and then to get essentially 3/5 of the voters agreeing on something. It's a very high hurdle.
Yeah. So this is a rare instance. And as a matter of fact, they've already looked ahead and they already have legislation planned to follow this up if this is approved.
Yes. And so that's probably a little confusing for voters. They hear all of these ads about, raising taxes on people over 250,000 or taxing retirement. And in fact, that's not what's on the ballot. What's on the ballot is this provision about allowing for a graduated income tax. The practical impact, however, is if this amendment fails, then the graduated income tax law that the legislature passed, you won't be able to implement it. It would be unconstitutional unless we change the Constitution.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Kent Redfield. Thanks for joining us. Just another indication that this election is going to be anything but normal. In Focus in Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald.
Election day is soon approaching, and on November 3rd, 2020, millions of Americans will cast their votes. Even still, amid the worldwide COVID epidemic, the dynamics of this political season are constantly changing. As Americans head to the polls this year, the looming COVID epidemic is placing new pressures on election workers to safeguard the health of voters against coronavirus transmission. To find out more, I traveled to the Jackson County Courthouse in Southern Illinois to speak with County Clerk and Recorder Frank Bird. After serving as Assistant Chief Deputy Clerk of Jackson County, Bird was elected County Clerk in 2018. In this position, Bird manages his county's election logistics, including overseeing the vote count and certifying winners. This year, extra precautions are being administered at polling stations to mitigate coronavirus spread. I sat down with Frank Bird to find out what voters can expect to see differently when heading to the polls this year.
The voters can expect to see a lot of different things: masks, gloves, sanitizer. They'll probably see social distancing signs. The election judges there'll be one in particular that will sanitize the polling booths, the pins, the sleeves that the ballots go in, the counters, trying to make sure that, like I said, we mitigate any kind of virus or health issue to any of the voters. We're going to have a lot more options this year. We'll have a vote center that's going to be in the courthouse. Curbside voting will be available on Election Day in the courthouse. And since the Election Day is a state holiday, that means that we'll probably have less people in the office. So we'll be able to offer those services to the voters in Jackson County.
In June of 2020, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed Senate Bill 1863 and House Bill 2238, establishing Election Day as a state holiday. Bird explains how this legislation helps to encourage safety measures.
The reason the election is now a state holiday was to mitigate any kind of virus transfer. I think it's going to help a lot, and it means that the voters are going to have more accessibility to come into the courthouse. But when they come in, we'll be able to give them undivided attention. There won't be a lot of activity other than what's going on in the lobby and in our office. Voters can do a lot of things to protect themselves, to take precautions. They can wear gloves. They can also make sure they always wear a mask. They can do the vote by mail. They could do early voting so there wouldn't be a large crowd. They can bring their own pen as long as it's black ink, and that way they can fill in the oval that's on the ballot. Those are just some of the few things. They can pay attention to what's going on with the agencies that are involved in this and see if there's any news that comes on before they leave the house. I want to explain to the viewers that this is going to be going to all the precincts that are in Jackson County. And these are our sanitizing kits, we call them. We have the cones for social distancing that will be placed out so the election judges can do that. We have masks. They'll be available to the judges and to the participants. The voters can use those. Gloves, both to the workers and to the voters. We have liquid sanitizer, which is very potent, and you can spray it and wipe things down with it and also use it on your hands. There'll be a refill of it here. We got this through a grant. Also, this right here will be the wipes, the sanitizing wipes. And of course, 2 rows of paper towels so they can wipe things down. I'd like the viewers to know in Jackson County that we're offering several different options on Election Day. We're going to be doing curbside voting. We're going to be having a vote center. And let me explain a vote center. A vote center is something more significant than ever. We've never had that in our county on Election Day in the courthouse. The voter can actually bypass their polling place, come to the courthouse and vote. And then we will have someone call their precinct, their polling place, and tell them this person voted, so that we can take them off the rolls and they can go on their way. This is very handy for people that have to drive across town or have to go get their children or maybe even just go to the store. If they have the ability just to pop in the courthouse and vote, that's going to be available. Also, grace period voting. Grace period voting is where you can register and vote on the same day with the right documentation. And the last is we're going to have, we already do have, is a ballot retrieval box. I had it installed on the west side of the courthouse. It's very significant and it's a huge success. We're averaging around 100 ballots a day. So if somebody gets a vote by mail ballot, they can bring it over with no postage. They can put it in the ballot retrieval box and we pick it up twice a day. I'd like to tell the voter that I take my job very seriously when it comes to making sure the elections go smooth and that I don't cause a health crisis to any of the voters. I work very hard to make sure that we have the sanitizing kits and everything so the voter can feel comfortable going out and voting like they always have. But if they want to take one of the options that I'm offering, they can do one of those too. We're trying to mitigate any kind of problem for the voter and make it accessible.
In Focus, in Murfreesboro, Illinois, I'm Mark St. George.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, Election Day might look a little different this year. Here's how to make sure your vote counts. If you decide to vote in person, remember, in Illinois, there's no campaigning allowed within 100 feet of polling places. That means you can't wear a hat or t-shirt with your favorite candidate's name on it or stand outside with a sign. It's also illegal to take a picture of your completed ballot. Take a selfie with your I voted sticker instead. If you're blind, physically disabled, or unable to read or write English, you're allowed to get help marking your ballot. And if your polling place is inaccessible, you can vote from your car with curbside voting. This year, you can also request curbside voting if you're worried about COVID. Check with your local election authority for details. Poll watchers are allowed in Illinois, but they have to be credentialed through the election authority in advance, and they aren't allowed to interfere with voters. If they do, the election judges can make them leave. Make sure you're at the right polling place. Some have changed because of COVID-19. If you have a problem, call your local election authority, usually a county clerk. If you're voting by mail, make sure you follow the instructions. You'll need to fill out your ballot and put it in the secrecy envelope and fill out the certification sheet. Then put both of those in the outer envelope and send it off. Ballots also require 70 cents postage. That's more than one regular stamp. Ballots can also be dropped off at your local election authority or put in designated drop boxes. If someone else takes your ballot to the election office for you, they have to complete the authorization form on the outer envelope. All ballots must be postmarked by November 3rd and arrive at the election authority within 14 days of the election to be counted. If you make a mistake on your mail-in ballot, crossing out or erasing isn't allowed. You can take your spoiled ballot into your election office and exchange it for a new one. If your ballot is rejected for some reason, officials must contact you within 48 hours. One of the most common reasons ballots are rejected is that a signature doesn't match the one on your voter registration. Ballots can also be rejected if they aren't sealed properly in the secrecy envelope. Some counties let you track your ballot so you know it made it safely. Check with your local office to find out how. If you change your mind about voting by mail, you can still vote in person as long as you turn your mail-in ballot to the workers at your polling station. Ballots can't be counted until polls close on election night, but they can be processed before then. Still, election night may be more like election week with so many more people voting by mail. Election authorities do track how many vote-by-mail ballots were sent and how many have arrived. So it's possible vote counts may change, especially in close races. All votes are provisional until certified by the state a couple of weeks after the election.
This year's election marks a special anniversary in the United States. It's been 100 years now that women have been active voting participants in presidential elections. And as Jennifer Fuller reports, local efforts to keep women involved in the process are continuing today.
2020's election is a special one, as 2019 marked a century since the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. 1920 was the first presidential election in the U.S. that included votes from American women. Today, women play a key role in shaping campaign strategy and in swaying elections in battleground areas, and leaders say they're still working for parity in political representation.
We don't need to have it flip to the other direction. Women are 50%, slightly more, of the population, and so we should be represented 50% throughout all industries in the political system. Now, if that happens, I believe that the country will be better off for it.
The League of Women Voters grew out of the women's suffrage movement and continues today as a nonpartisan organization that aims to educate voters and get more people involved in the political process.
Well, I think women have shown that they are interested in being part of the whole picture. They were very involved in lobbying for the HAVA, or Help America Vote Act, and getting funding for that. They've been involved in the voting rights.
The grassroots organization has local chapters all over the country. Jackson County's chapter covers much of southern Illinois. Members spend a lot of time registering voters and working to educate people before they cast their ballot.
Without information, your effect in making changes is limited. All you can do is go up and say, I'd like you to do this. And they can say, well, thank you for telling me. But, it doesn't have an impact. But if you can say, I want you to do this because this affects this, and it affects that, and it affects this type of an individual and that individual, and it does this, and you try to keep it as factually based as possible, not what I think and what I know, you're more likely to be effective.
When Gail Clam came to Carbondale in the 1970s, she immediately got involved with the League. It was a time when the age to vote had been lowered from 21 to 18, and the Equal Rights Amendment was being debated and voted on. Voter registration drives were eye-opening experiences.
It truly amazed me. We used to get a room, one of the river rooms at the Student Center, and we had 2 8-foot tables with 3 or 4 people behind each table. We would register people on 2-hour blocks. When the day was over, we would have registered anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 people.
Today, Clam says those numbers are much smaller, but she attributes that to better technology and more access to the registration process. She points to things like motor voter legislation that expanded the places you can register to vote. Education is, of course, another critical component of the League's work. After the 19th Amendment was ratified, registration drives turned their focus to issue-based events. The national organization started identifying which issues they found most important, and President at the time, Maude Wood Park, acknowledged it was a big list.
They had 69 topics that they were going to work on. She called it was a kettle of eels. And I would say initially, it maybe involved a lot of things you would think that would be women issues, such as child welfare, education, public health, and citizenship. So of course, initially they even were trying to help not just other women, but some immigrants to learn what it meant to be a citizen. How do you vote? How does it work?
Because they knew how important that was in establishing the right to vote. But the second thing that they established right back then was to always focus and to set up our program on legislative current issues, problems that were occurring. And the reason for that was because the men had said that the reason why women should not get the right to vote was because they didn't know anything about what was going on. And that's a case that could be argued for a lot of people. They don't pay any attention to what's going on. They don't know what the issues are, and therefore they're ineffective in trying to push for changes.
The push for change now includes equal representation, and there are signs of change, including a record number of women in Congress, and even more running for office now.
The issue for women was it's a good old boys club, and it's hard to get in. And there are ways, and as you'll see, more and more women are running for office. And it won't be tomorrow, but it'll be soon, where it won't be like 10% women and 80%, 90%. I mean, it has happened in all professions. And you see it, but it's gradual, and some professions are more resistant to it.
The answers to those questions, and others, may be more clear after this year's election. In Focus in Carbondale, I'm Jennifer Fuller.
Many people may be looking for an escape as election fatigue sets in. The arts can provide some relief, but COVID-19 makes it a bit complicated. As arts organizations look for new ways to do things, the Illinois Symphony Orchestra is reaching out to expand through the pandemic. Julie Staley has more on the new endeavors they're taking on.
Some arts organizations have had to downsize or even consider dissolving during the pandemic, but the Illinois Symphony Orchestra has found a way to grow. For 25 years, the Illinois Symphony Orchestra has been bringing beautiful music to Illinois in Bloomington and Springfield. But in March, through the pandemic, the music stopped.
The challenges we're dealing with right now are unprecedented, as we use that word so often. It's making everybody in the performing arts rethink what they do and adapt to the live performance experience in the future.
So a lot of musicians have not been working since the middle of March. And this is a live performance. How do you make sure people on stage are safe? Social distancing on stage, it is an ensemble. You actually rely on physically close together to be able to hear each other. Now everyone has to have their own stand. Usually with the violins, two people share a stand and the inside player turn the pages. So we're seeing a lot of players adopting technology with these sort of iPads and little thing that they can press with their feet to turn the page. So a lot of these sort of practical issues.
They've been able to rehearse and have performances online or at small venues outdoors.
Our tagline is listen live, so it's the live music experience which present challenges, but it at least allows us to engage our patrons and audiences in performance as we navigate where we will be going until we can get back to the live performance experience.
The main concern for us is the well-being of our musicians, because it is their livelihood, and not being able to work since March has taken a big toll.
In July, the Illinois Symphony Orchestra added to their organization, taking the Sangamon Valley Youth Symphony under its wing. Now, the Illinois Youth Symphony.
Just very symphonic, warm sound. Here we go. One, ready, and.
So now we're able to help and serve a whole new part of the community with the youth orchestra programs. We're working to have the experience that the students will be able to meet in person with, very strict guidelines at the Hoagland Center, but hopefully they will actually be able to come together and rehearse and perform, which also is really vital to youth in just their development and their social development in the community.
The resources we are able to offer, administrative resource with the staff, and also artistic resource with the conductors here and the players that we have. They are the provider of string education in Springfield, because we don't have that in the schools anymore. And so it is actually a fairly substantial and significant organization. They're now all part of the same family. So I think it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful venture.
The big focus is on those donors and contributors to the orchestra to help us get through this challenging time, and patrons are definitely realize the challenges with our small live performances that we did have. Just talking to the patrons, they understand the situation.
There is a hunger for music education. There is certainly a hunger for live concerts, and this town is actually very supportive of the arts in many aspects of it. It's been just wonderful to get to know the community and just to see the community coming together, even in these challenging times. And we've had very, very good support from the community.
You can enjoy their music without even leaving home. Go to their website, ilsymphony.org, for more information. For InFocus, I'm Julie Staley.
Other music organizations are getting creative as well, including the new SI Fest Carbondale Community Arts Chamber Series, which is taking performances to smaller venues with limited audiences. Thanks for joining us on this edition of InFocus. You can find this episode and more at our website, WSIUnews.org, or by finding us on your PBS video app.